Malala Yousafzai began her activism as an 11-year-old schoolgirl in Pakistan.
I will get my education if it is in home, school or any place.
After surviving an assassination attempt by the Taliban, she went on to become the world's youngest ever Nobel Peace Prize winner at age 17.
One child, one teacher, one book, and one pen can change the world.
Nearly a decade later, her foundation is now a global force for the rights of girls. Today, she's in Nigeria, the country with the highest number of out-of-school children, according to UNICEF, to meet with local partners who are trying to reverse this. I sat down with her to discuss her work in Nigeria, the Malala we don't see, and whether she considers herself an activist or a politician in today's global landscape. Hi Malala, thank you for accepting our invite. Welcome to the BBC.
Thank you.
And welcome to Nigeria. This is your fourth time here, right?
Yes, yeah.
Tell us, why are you here?
So I'm here for Malala Fund's work. Malala Fund has been working in Nigeria for about a decade now.
Globally, Nigeria has the highest rate of out-of-school children. What do you think is the root cause of that problem?
I always think about, like, what is it that keeps a girl out of school? Like, that is a question that keeps me up at night. But for that, the most powerful way is to work with local education activists, because the challenges are so different in each part of the world, and then even within a country it's different. If you're working in the north or south, or even within one city, it could be a completely different environment. So the power of local education activists was very clear to me, and that's why we have been supporting local education activists in Nigeria. It is connected with other issues, like even in Nigeria people have been talking about child marriage, forced marriages, and our activists are advocating how, along with the policy changes to prevent child marriage, we also have to invest in their quality education, because the longer a girl can stay in school, it can protect her.
You've recently written a new book which is yet to be released. It's called Finding My Way. And that title just seems very personal. What does it mean to you?
Yes, this is the most personal reflections I have ever shared before. And I was still in an induced coma in hospital when the world was defining me as this brave, courageous young activist. But I was still 15 years old and I did not know who I was. So I have openly shared about my life since then. I talk about my school years, which were lonely. I talk about my college life, where I decided to become more of a reckless student. I talk about friendships and love life, and at the same time mental health, because that is something that affected me many, many years later after the attack. So I have been very open in expressing my feelings, and I help the readers walk through the journey with me. This is, in a way, me reintroducing myself.
You once said, the world knows your name, but the world doesn't really know you. What did you mean by that?
Yes, I think my exposure to media, to public life, has really sort of limited the way I could express myself. And in this book, I talk more about the personal journey. Activism is my lifelong mission, and that will continue to be a part of my life. But there's always more to a person than just that.
Your story is one that is very touching, one that almost everyone in the world knows. When you were shot at 15 by the Taliban, and that must have impacted your childhood, like you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Now. Would you say that subsequently fame also impacted your childhood?
I think it was a bit of everything. At 15, when I was recovered from the attack, I started school in the UK, in a completely new country. I actually really struggled to make friends. By the end of my school time, I just had made one friend. So when I was about to join university, I had one mission, and that was to make as many friends as I could, because friends also help you grow as a person. It is part of the emotional growth. So I'm so lucky to say right now that I have made a lot of friends, and they have helped me in difficult moments, from handling essay crisis to just have moments of laughter, to also being there with each other when we have gone through tough moments.
But why did you struggle to make friends? Was it the fame?
I think it's because people think that they know you, they have heard about you on TV, so they have this fixed image of you, and that image of mine is that of like this brave Malala who survived the Taliban's attack at age 15, and just it was this gap of having a normal conversation that I couldn't get, because like in Pakistan, of course I was, you know, a normal girl. I was mischievous sometimes. I had a lot of friends. I loved to talk about anything. And what I wanted was that you can be an activist, but you could also be yourself. And this is something that I missed on when I was in the school days. But I had to like relearn and reconnect with all of that later on in my college time.
You speak about your mental health a lot. And you also mentioned many times that you go to therapy. How has therapy helped you?
Actually, I started therapy 7-8 years later after the attack, because when I survived the physical injuries, I thought this is it. This is what recovery means. And you know, if you heal from one bullet, like you don't need a conversation about therapy and how do you feel. But many years later, I realized how the trauma, the flashbacks, everything just got triggered and they all came back, and it broke me down, because if you don't address it on time, it can completely like break you down when it comes to you all at once. So my perspective on mental health has completely changed now. It was actually my university friend who recommended that I should see a therapist, because in the beginning I thought nobody could understand me, my situation is just so different, but I had a few sessions with a therapist and I realized, okay, like this is something I should have been having much earlier. And I thought the therapist could like maybe fix it in one session. I thought she would write some medication, but no, I think it's about conversation. It's about processing what you're going through and learning that, you know, this is now a part of you, but the effect of it on you gets smaller and smaller when you face it, when you talk about it. So yes, I like therapy is now part of like my journey.
You once mentioned that your mom was very strict when you were growing up. You didn't have the easiest relationship. How is your relationship with her now?
My mom and I are becoming friends now. I think it's still work in progress. I fully understand why my mom was strict growing up, because she had a very different childhood than mine. Girls at her time were not allowed to go to school. They were told off for, you know, the clothes they were wearing, or if, you know, they were told like to stay inside their houses. They could not have fun or anything. They could not play outside as soon as they became like teenagers. So for my mom, it was always about keep your daughter restricted, and so that she does not get into trouble. So my mom had that intention in mind. So she would always say, like, you know, what would your cousins think? What would your family members think if you wear jeans, or if you wear like non-traditional Pakistani dresses? So for her, like, I had to still represent my culture and like my people. And I said, like, Mom, like I'm just like still a student, like in college, like everybody wears jeans, like it's completely fine. It's still a modest dress, and I want to like be like any other student. I don't want to stand out in my traditional clothing. But we would always have these arguments. It was always a topic about something, but I knew she always had a good intention.
For a mom that was very conservative like yours, how did she handle you coming out at 11 to champion for girl child education?
So my mom is conservative more in the dress style, and you know, like don't talk to boys and all of that. But she is a very brave woman, and she herself was like supporting me and my dad in our activism. She never told us not to speak out, because she knew that education is a way to help girls have a better future. Like she herself saved so many friends in Pakistan. There was like one friend of mine who was still like, you know, 11 or 12 years old, and my mom like saved her life because she was raped, and my mom helped her to get an abortion. And when I think back, like, yes, like my mom is, like, if you debate with her, she might give you a different opinion, but in terms of her action, she is about saving girls' lives. She is
Right.
about giving them a better future.
Right. So let's move on to some global issues now, Malala. In the past, you've spoken a lot about Gaza, and you've also provided school supplies for children in Gaza. And you recently just come in from Egypt, where you
Yes.
met with Palestinian refugees. In your opinion, do you think that is enough to make an impact?
I think for as long as we witness a genocide happening in Gaza, everything we're doing is not enough. But I do believe that we should be doing what we can. It does not mean we give up on taking action. For me, that is about uplifting the voices of Palestinian people, and then support the local organizations who are helping Palestinians in Gaza and also in the neighboring countries, the Palestinians who have become refugees. And that's exactly what I did. We have been supporting these organizations for the past 2 years now, and I recently visited the projects of one of the organizations called Inara. And in Egypt, I went to their programs. They are providing education, mental health support, and they're helping the families. They're doing like surgeries for these children who have lost their limbs and who have been, going through such trauma. They're helping them through mental health program. It just broke my heart to see what these children have witnessed.
In the past, you've faced criticism for working with international figures who support Israel. How do you view that criticism?
I think for me, like, one thing is very clear, that everybody should know my own stance. And I always stand with the people who are like victims of violence, who have been oppressed. And I have been like supporting Palestinian people for a very long time, not just in the past 2 years, but before that as well. And through Malala Fund and my personal support, we have given out, like, I think up to $1 million in grants to the local organizations who are helping children, with the psychosocial support or with school and education. And I think, like, for us, we just have to be very clear in where we stand. That's the most important thing. And, people who do not hold same values, then you distance yourself, or you just make it very clear where you stand.
I think that's what people have been, the point people have been trying to make. For example, in the past, you once faced criticism for doing a musical with Hillary Clinton.
I think, what things look like in the outside are very different from the reality. I think this is something that I see a lot on social media, where people like connect different dots and then they assume, like, okay, this is what's really happening, but that's not really true. Just to tell you about the musical, like, there are many executive producers of a show, and their job is to support the musical. They're not necessarily working together. So my goal was to just support the musical, which is about women's rights to vote, and it's a women's empowerment story. Like, I did not know who else was going to join as executive producer and all of that. And anybody can join as an executive producer at any time. So, like, it's just like not a true reflection of the reality. But, like, I'm not here to say, I want to defend myself or I have done enough, because the most important thing is what's happening in Gaza. And I think that's what deserves our attention.
So would you personally consider yourself as an activist or a politician?
I think for me, like, it's about advocating for a safer future for children. It's about every girl having the right to school, and that is the mission of my life. I promote that in everything that I do, whether that is the work through Malala Fund, which is a nonprofit that works in many countries, and whether that is something like, storytelling or sports and all of these things that I'm doing. For me, it's about how do we create more opportunities. But if you look at the world, and if there's like a war going on, if there's conflict, if there's a genocide going on, like, millions of children lose their future, and we cannot look away from that. So for me, it's bringing attention to these crises, these situations that children, that women face, and being there for them.
Do you ever fear losing influence or funding due to your stance on Gaza?
I think, whatever the issue is, the most important thing is that you stay true to what you believe, And if people don't support you, it's up to them.
So in Pakistan, the Taliban are making a comeback, especially in some regions where women and children are being killed. What do you have to say on that?
From the very start, when the Taliban took control of Afghanistan, I made it very clear that countries standing up to the Taliban and protecting the right of women and girls is not just important for women and girls in Afghanistan, but this is important for women and girls in the neighboring countries and women and girls everywhere. Women's rights in Afghanistan should be treated as an issue of women's rights everywhere. You are very right that the reappearance of the Taliban in parts of Pakistan is very concerning, and I fear about the education of girls in Afghanistan and in parts of Pakistan as well, because it's been very clear. We have seen what the Taliban believe in for more than 2 decades now. The Taliban do not believe in girls' education. They do not believe in women's rights. They have issued more than 100 decrees and edicts in Afghanistan limiting women from the right to work, the right to education. And I hope that countries actually and leaders, including Pakistan, can stand up and protect the right to education for girls. They can protect the rights of women.
We've seen, the Taliban make such a strong comeback in Pakistan and Afghanistan, like you just mentioned. How do you stay hopeful for the future of education for girls?
It is the activism of Afghan women, of other women activists in Pakistan, everywhere, that gives me hope, because women and girls are not giving up. When I look at how different organizations and women activists are providing education through alternative platforms like radio, television, underground, secret schools, I know that they are unstoppable. They will find a way to keep girls educated, to ensure that girls do not lose a future. But at the same time, they need support. They need more solidarity. Afghan women are also leading a campaign to push countries to hold the Taliban accountable. Like, we need more pressure. Like, it's been 4 years and it seems like the world is just using words, but they're not really taking action against the Taliban. We need to go beyond just condemning them. And one thing they're asking for is to recognize what's happening in Afghanistan as a gender apartheid, and that it should be codified in the international law so that perpetrators like the Taliban can be held accountable, and at the same time, like, we can have better protection for women's rights in every country.
So Malala, apart from Afghanistan, where the Taliban has basically banned young girls from going to school, we've seen a surge in books being banned, even in countries like the US. Why do you think education is such a threat to people?
Education is very powerful, and when education is controlled, or when books get banned, or when people are promoting one specific ideology through it, or when they sort of limit it, I don't think it remains education anymore. It becomes indoctrination. So we need to make a distinction between that. And at the same time, like, it just reminds us of how important it is that we give the skills of critical thinking to our children. We expose them to different ideas, to different concepts, so that they can make decisions for themselves, that they're more aware, and they can have the skills to make a future for themselves.
Malala, you've had an extraordinary life. Do you have any regrets, or are there any things that you would have done differently if you could take back the hands of time?
I actually don't think about regrets. This has been a way of my living life. I think if we think back too much, then it can keep us distracted from moving ahead.
Everything you've been through, your journey when you were shot, and the Malala of today, do you think it's all worth it?
This is a tough question to address, because I usually would say that I wish I was in the old life. I wish I could have continued my life in Pakistan. But when I think about how things took a turn, and now that I'm able to lead a movement for girls' education, and we are able to work together with incredible partners, like here in Nigeria, when I look at these incredible organizations, like a dozen of them who are leading change for girls, then I'm like, whatever the circumstances, this pathway is rewarding, and I do not want to look back. I do not want to change it for a second because of the change that today we can make for girls.
Thank you so much, Malala.
Thank you.